Everything we have covered so far has been largely invisible. Voting logic, treasury flow, DAO identity, participation, incentives, conflict, culture. These are the forces that shape decentralized governance, but you cannot see them unless you know where to look. Most people assume a DAO is defined by its code. They look at the smart contracts, the voting mechanisms, and the multisig wallets and assume those systems tell the whole story. But code does not show you how a DAO behaves. It does not show you who actually participates, who controls the conversation, how contributors respond to incentives, where conflict is building, or whether treasury spending is producing results. That is why a real DAO dashboard matters. It brings these invisible layers together and turns them into something observable, measurable, and trackable. A dashboard shows you how a DAO actually behaves, not how people assume it behaves. A DAO is not just code. It is people, patterns, habits, incentives, capital, and decisions. A real DAO dashboard combines these layers into one operating view. It connects proposal activity, voting behavior, contributor participation, treasury movement, and community discussion. It doesn't rely on one metric. It looks at signals altogether. A low turnout vote may indicate disengagement. It may also indicate that token holders trust their delegates. A heated discussion may indicate dysfunction, or it may show that contributors are taking important decisions seriously. The number alone is not the answer. The pattern is. A useful dashboard helps you move through 4 stages: signal, trend, context, and outcome. First, identify what happened. Then determine whether it is recurring. Place it within the broader behavior of the DAO. Finally, measure what that behavior produced. That is how a dashboard exposes the operating reality of governance. Today, we are breaking down how a real DAO dashboard reveals the identity layer, the participation layer, the incentive layer, the conflict layer, and the treasury layer, all at once. A constitution tells you what a DAO claims to value. Behavior shows you what it actually prioritizes. A dashboard reveals identity through proposal categories, discussion patterns, funding decisions, voting behavior, and the initiatives that consistently receive community support. Over time, those patterns form a measurable picture of what the DAO believes it is building. A builder DAO may show heavy proposal activity around development, experimentation, technical upgrades, tools, and integrations. An investment DAO may concentrate its attention on capital allocation, yield strategies, portfolio construction, and risk management. An activist DAO may show stronger engagement around mission-driven initiatives, community outreach, advocacy, and social impact. A research DAO may prioritize analysis, data collection, long-term exploration, and collaborative knowledge production. But the important question is not simply what gets proposed. It is what receives attention, what gets funded, and what gets completed. A DAO may describe itself as a builder community while directing most of its treasury towards marketing. It may claim to support decentralization while allowing a small group of delegates to control every meaningful decision. That gap between stated identity and demonstrated behavior is one of the most valuable signals a dashboard can reveal. Identity becomes visible through patterns. The dashboard shows you what the DAO values, what it ignores, what it repeatedly funds, and what it consistently pushes forward. Without identity signals, governance can appear random. With identity signals, you can determine whether the DAO's decisions align with its stated mission. Participation norms remain invisible until they are measured. A dashboard can track voter turnout, voting power concentration, proposal engagement, comment activity, contributor consistency, delegation patterns, discussion velocity, and repeat participation rates. Together, those metrics show who is carrying governance. You can see whether participation is distributed across the community or concentrated among a small group. You can see whether contributors remain involved across multiple proposals or only appear when a controversial vote or financial incentive attracts attention. You can also see whether new participants become recurring contributors or disappear after their first interaction. But no single participation metric proves that a DAO is healthy. High turnout may indicate a strong community engagement. It may also reflect a one-time proposal that attracted unusual attention. Low turnout may indicate apathy. It may also reflect a mature delegation system in which token holders have intentionally assigned their voting power to trusted representatives. Concentrated voting power may indicate governance capture. In another DAO, it may reflect specialized expertise or temporary delegation. The dashboard becomes useful when those signals are compared over time and connected with outcomes. Are the same 5 wallets deciding every proposal? Are new contributors entering governance? Do discussions produce meaningful revisions? Do delegates explain their decisions? Does participation remain stable after reward programs end? Healthy participation is not simply a high number. It is participation that is informed, recurring, sufficiently distributed, and connected to real decisions. A dashboard makes those patterns visible. It shows whether governance is genuinely shared or merely presented as decentralized. Incentives shape behavior whether the DAO acknowledges them or not. A dashboard can show you how contributors respond to token rewards, reputation systems, grants, bounties, governance power, and access opportunities. The important question is not simply whether an incentive increased activity. The question is what kind of activity it created and whether that activity continued. Imagine a DAO launches a reward program and proposal participation triples. At first glance, that looks successful. But what happens when the rewards decline? If participation immediately collapses, the program may have recreated transactions rather than commitment. If contributors remain active, take on greater responsibility, and continue improving proposals, the incentive may have helped create long-term ownership. That is why incentive data should be connected with retention, contribution quality, proposal outcomes, and continued involvement. Aligned incentives produce behavior that supports the mission. Contributors show up consistently, proposals become more thoughtful, responsibilities become distributed, people behave as though the future of the organization matters to them. Misaligned incentives produce a different pattern. Activity spikes around rewards and disappears afterward. Low-effort proposals increase. Contributors optimize for payouts instead of outcomes. Governance becomes something people extract value from rather than something they build together. A dashboard exposes that distinction. It shows whether incentives are developing owners or attracting spectators. It shows whether the DAO is building durable momentum or renting temporary attention. Conflict is not always loud. Sometimes it appears as repeated voting blocks, stalled proposals, contributor departures, unusually long deliberation periods, or discussions that stop without a resolution. A dashboard cannot capture every private conversation or informal relationship, but it can show where conflict is producing measurable consequences. You may see the same groups repeatedly opposing each other. You may see proposals delayed for weeks without meaningful revision. You may see participation decline after contentious votes. You may see experienced contributors stop commenting, stop submitting proposals, or leave the DAO entirely. Those are not proof of one specific problem. They are signals that demand context. Healthy DAOs use disagreement to improve decisions. Proposals change through debate. Weak assumptions are challenged. Contributors disagree with ideas without attacking people. Deliberation produces refinement, clarity, and stronger execution. In that environment, conflict creates value. Unhealthy DAOs allow disagreement to become personal, repetitive, or unresolved. The same disputes return. Proposals stall without improvement. Voting blocks harden. Contributors begin avoiding governance because participating no longer feels productive. In that environment, conflict consumes value. The dashboard helps reveal which direction the DAO is moving. Is debate producing better proposals? Are disagreements eventually resolved? Do contributors remain involved after losing a vote? Or is every conflict creating deeper polarization and lower participation? The goal is not to eliminate disagreement. The goal is to determine whether disagreement is strengthening governance or slowly breaking it apart. Treasury behavior is one of the clearest indicators of organizational culture. A dashboard can show spending categories, proposal costs, multisig activity, runway projections, allocation trends, recurring expenses, grant distributions, and the relationship between spending and outcomes. That final relationship is critical. It is not enough to know that a proposal received $100,000. You also need to know whether its milestones were completed, whether the funds were fully deployed, and whether the promised outcome occurred. A transaction explorer may tell you where the money went. A real DAO dashboard should help explain what that money accomplished. Healthy treasury behavior shows alignment between capital, mission, and execution. Spending categories are clear. Proposals explain their cost. Milestones are measurable. Signers act consistently. Reporting continues after funds are distributed. The Treasury supports projects that advance the DAO's long-term objectives. Unhealthy Treasury behavior produces a different pattern. Spending becomes reactive. Similar proposals receive inconsistent treatment. Funds are distributed without follow-up. Multisig activity becomes difficult to interpret. Runway declines while measurable output remains flat. The Treasury may still be moving, but movement is not the same as progress. A useful dashboard connects allocation with accountability. Was it funded? Who approved it? Who received the capital? Was it promised? What was delivered? How did the result compare with the original cost? Those questions reveal whether the Treasury is functioning as a strategic capital or slowly becoming an unmanaged liability. Treasury flow makes culture financial. It shows what the DAO is willing to support, what it is willing to tolerate, and whether its priorities survive contact with actual spending. A dashboard is not a verdict. It is an analytical system. To use it correctly, you cannot judge a DAO through one proposal, one vote, or 1 month of activity. You look for persistent patterns. Start with the signal. What changed? Turnout dropped. Spending increased. Discussion slowed. Contributor retention improved. Voting power became more centralized, concentrated. Then look for the trend. Was this a one-time anomaly, or has it happened across multiple governance cycles? Then add context. Did participation fall because the community disengaged, or because delegation increased? Did treasury spending rise because the DAO became careless, or because it began funding a major development initiative? Did conflict increase because the community became dysfunctional, or because important decisions were finally being debated? Finally, measure the outcome. Did the behavior produce stronger proposals, better execution, greater decentralization, and measurable progress? Or did it create waste, stagnation, and contributor withdrawal? Signal, trend, context, outcome. That framework prevents the dashboard from becoming a collection of impressive-looking charts without meaning. The data matters only when it helps explain behavior. Everything we covered in DAO culture becomes measurable here. Identity appears in what the DAO repeatedly supports. Participation appears in who contributes, who votes, and who remains involved. Incentives appear in the behavior they create after rewards are introduced or removed. Conflict appears in proposal delays, contributor retention, and voting polarization, and the quality of deliberation. Treasury culture appears in what gets funded, how spending is justified, and whether capital produces results. Culture is no longer just an abstract idea. It becomes a pattern you can observe, diagnose, and improve. What does the DAO consistently fund? Who actually influences decisions? Which contributors remain after the incentives disappear? Where does disagreement improve proposals, and where does it stop progress? Does the organization's behavior match the identity it presents to the public? Those questions reveal the operating reality of the DAO. A dashboard will never capture every conversation, relationship, or informal center of influence, but it provides enough observable evidence to replace assumptions with patterns. And once those patterns become visible, governance can be evaluated honestly. That is the real power of a real DAO dashboard. Now, if you want a deeper breakdown of how decentralized governance works, it's all in my book, Understanding Crypto, a clear guide for new investors. It explores identity, incentives, participation, conflict, treasury behavior, and the human layer that exists behind the code. And if this helped you understand how a real DAO dashboard exposes the operating reality of governance, stay tuned. Because this completes Arc 5, Governance and DAOs. Next, we move into Arc 6, Crypto Culture and Meme Signals. We're going to examine meme coins, separate signal from noise, decode the behavior of crypto culture on X, and look behind the scenes at how narratives are created, amplified, and transformed into market momentum. Because in crypto, culture does not simply react to the market. Culture can move it. Stay locked.